Okay. Of course, my mic wasn't working. It didn't want to come back to work either, apparently. So, anyway, welcome to the What's Up Webcast. Okay, let's try this again for the upteenth time. All right. Welcome to the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatch USA YouTube channel. We cover everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. Sorry about the audio. My box needed a reset. Everything looked good, but now we're all set. So I hope everyone had a good holiday break. Our team is just coming back to it. Hopefully everyone had a good Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever the holiday is, as well as a good New Year's. Hopefully you have all your fingers, didn't blow anything off. But yes, welcome back. This is the first episode of the What's Up Webcast for 2025, and we're doing a January night skies. If you're new to the webcast here, this is the first episode of every month. We go over cool things to see in the sky throughout the month, and that's how we started off. So this is our 5th year doing the What's Up Webcast. It's pretty crazy. Excuse me. Okay. So if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on a video. Hit the subscribe button down below. If you have an idea for an episode, you can email us at info@skywatchusa.com. Title it What's Up, and you can give us some ideas. We're always looking for some ideas. Of course, if you want to stay up with what's going on at Skywatcher, from sales to new products to the webcast episodes, email blast, you can head over to skywatchusa.com and hit subscribe and save and join the email list there. Please keep in mind the Skywatch USA website, any sales or anything on there is only for the US and Canada at this time. So just FYI, but we know there's a lot of our international friends that are also watching, and we definitely appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully the topics are helpful and you like hanging out. So let's get started. So the big bright thing in the nighttime sky, if you've never seen it before, that's the moon. And new moon for the month of January is at the end of the month. That's January 29th. New moon weekend, if you're not familiar, if maybe you just got a telescope for the holidays, you're just getting into the hobby, so welcome. New moon is when it is the darkest time of the month, which is great to get your telescope and head out to those dark skies away from city lights and do some really good observing. You usually want to pick new moon weekend. So the new moon is January 29th, which means our new moon weekend within January. Technically, you could go out this weekend, would be pretty dark because it's a thin crescent moon and it sets early. But the technical dark weekend for January is the 25th and the 26th. Towards the end of the month. So check that out. Of course, then the opposite of that is the full moon, which is January 14th, which is about 2 weeks from now. It's the wolf moon, and this got its name for the howling wolves that were often heard this time of year. Depending on what culture, there is going to be a different name for the full moon, depending on the culture. Which is kind of cool. So it's very similar to the constellations, where depending on where in the world you are, there are different cultural connections to the nighttime sky. Full moons are no different. So the full moon for January is the wolf moon, but there are many, many other names that you can look up. I like to use Farmer's Almanac. Their website has all kinds of information on the various names of the full moons. But yeah, the wolf moon for January. And that is January 14th. Planets. If you haven't been out lately, there's planets all over the place. And let's bring up Stellarium. Stellarium is a great freeware that you can get. It's a planetarium software. You can do telescope control as well. Does all kinds of good things, but we like to use it here because it's easy. Anybody can get it. So it's pretty good. So for planets right now, we've got Venus up in the nighttime sky, as you've probably seen a lot lately. It's the big bright thing in the west, just after the sun goes down. Of course, not far from there, we have Saturn. as hanging out. We have a little crescent moon happening this evening, as you can see right there. Venus and the crescent moon will be pretty close tonight, so it'll be kind of a cool photo opportunity if you're looking to get a shot of that. Uranus is right over here, not far from the Pleiades cluster, but you will need a telescope to see the planet Uranus. Jupiter is big and bright, hard to miss, especially just after sunset. You'll have Venus over in the west, very big and bright, and then over in the east you'll have Jupiter. So it's kind of framing up the sky there, and that is currently in the constellation of Taurus the Bull. It's been looking pretty good lately. Been looking at it for a couple nights recently, so that's been cool. And then as the evening progresses, we eventually get Mars. Mars is kind of making its appearance around 8 o'clock in the evening. By 9 o'clock, it's really starting to get up high enough to where you can start really looking at it. I have not had a chance to look at Mars yet. I'm hoping to get one of the refractors on it. I've seen some pretty cool pictures from friends of mine who are pretty good planetary imagers, and it looks pretty cool, but I have not had a chance to get a telescope on it yet. So I'm hoping to do that here shortly. But yeah, we have all kinds of planets up this time of year. They're spread all across the sky right now. So if you're into observing planets, there you go. If you just got a telescope for the holidays, got plenty of stuff to go off of. So this weekend will be a good chance to get out and see the planets, the moon. You could be pretty busy with a lot of the stuff that's up right now. So all kinds of things to check out in the nighttime sky for January. And yeah, let's see if there's any. So you're going to have the moon and the Pleiades really close to each other. That will be on the 9th. And then, yeah, moon and Jupiter aren't too close to each other. Let's see as we get further down. Oh, there's a good one right here. Moon and Mars are right next to each other on the 13th. Let's see. Is there an occultation? There might be an occultation, but it might happen another part of it. Let's see. Yeah, if it does happen, I don't think it's going to be visible where I'm at. So, but yeah, you've got a nice photo op right there with the moon and Mars on the, I'm sorry. Wait, yeah, the 13th of January. They're going to be super close to each other. So that's going to be cool. So do I look at the jet stream map before observing session? I don't. I do have friends who do that, like the really, high-end planetary observers that I'm friends with. I've got a few that are really into it. They bring that up and they swear by it. I haven't. I'm a very casual observer. I can't stick to a list. I just like to go out and view what I can and see what happens. But I don't usually pay attention to it. If I luck out and the viewing is good, then great. If not, then the viewing wasn't so great. So, but no, I don't. But I do have friends who do. So, and I've heard very good things about doing it. So one day I'll learn. So, and then, yeah, as we get to the later part of the month, then it gets very dark in the evening when we get to the new moon time. So anyway, that is the planets right now. All kinds of stuff to see right there. Oh, sorry, I kind of jumped over it. If you want to support the channel a little bit more, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com. We've got all kinds of cool swag. There's our website, skywatcherusa.com, all kinds of stuff there. So yeah, I forgot to mention that as well earlier, so apologies. Let's see. Some questions here. Any tips and tricks to avoid foggy eyepieces? I have that problem when it gets cold here. I have no idea. If they fog up, and eventually I let them air out. Someone might do it, but not sure. Let's see. Next up is the sun. Before we get into this, if you are going to be observing the sun, please make sure you are using dedicated filters that are safe to use. Don't just be using, whatever. You need to be very careful when observing the sun. If you don't know anything about observing the sun, we have several episodes from a few years ago talking about solar filters, how they work, which ones to look at, all kinds of stuff, which we're probably going to have to update because we have our own solar scopes now. The Heliostar series, which we're excited to actually show them off. If you're going to be at NEAF this year, we should have some available to show this year, which is going to be very cool. But anyway, before observing the sun, please make sure you are using the correct solar filters on your telescope so you can be safe about it. And the sun is quite active right now. 2025 is actually the solar maximum, the peak of it. And for the next couple years, the sun is going to be fairly active as well before it really gets kind of dull. So there's a few years before we really go to a quiet sun, but it's rocking and rolling lately. The sun is a great target because it's highly active. It changes every day. There's prominences in other regions that you can observe. And if you're into sketching or imaging, it's a very dynamic object for you to take a look at. We have several episodes that cover solar imaging and what to look at and how to do it and stuff like that as well. But the sun is a very active object to see. If you want to see what's going on there, I like to go to Gong, Gong, H alpha. Just type that in Yahoo and it pops up. And it gives you the professional observatories. So you can see there's a lot of filaments up today. There's some prominences around the edge. Nothing huge right now, but this is in hydrogen alpha. So if you have a hydrogen alpha solar filter, do not use a imaging nighttime filter. They are not the same and they are not safe to use. You need to use a dedicated solar hydrogen alpha filter or telescope to get these views. Otherwise, you can just use a white light filter, which is what this is. You can see there's all kinds of little sunspots speckled across the sun right now. So even a white light filter on your telescope will show you the sunspots. And then you get to the more elaborate filters, like I said, like hydrogen alpha, calcium K, calcium H, sodium, whatever. There's all kinds of filters that can be used to observe different phenomenon on the sun. Let's see, what type of telescope would you recommend to those who live in a cold climate where it gets 32 degrees and below fast? So any telescope should work in a cold environment. However, something that is easy to acclimate to the temperatures fast is generally what I would probably go with. So I don't know if you're imaging or doing visual. I'm a big fan of ED doublet or fluorite doublet apo refractors. If you are doing visual, you really don't need a big complicated triplet to do really nice viewing. Triplets are nice. They're generally designed for astrophotography to give you the highest level of correction. But with a triplet, you generally have air gaps between the two lenses or the three lenses that are in there. There's two air gaps in between them. Some of them even use oil for like tech, and some other companies use oil space triplets. We use airspace as well as many others use airspace now, but it takes time for that to acclimate, and that's a lot of glass. A doublet, however, if you're only doing visual and some light astrophotography, doublets cool very, very quickly. They're very sharp, and they acclimate well. So that would be like our EvoStar ED series is that way. The Takahashi FS and FC refractors are very good if you want like a fluorite doublet. There's a little TOC 60 doublet back there. Something that can acclimate quickly. Or even if you have like a Newtonian with a very thin mirror, you can acclimate quickly to that as well. But you're going to have to still give it some time if you're going from inside to outside. But if you're dealing with temperature drops quickly, you need a telescope that acclimates to that drop quickly. So less glass, essentially. I would avoid like matte Cassegrains. They take a very long time to acclimate, although they are quite sharp and excellent planetary telescopes. they take a long time to actually acclimate to the environment. And if you're constantly chasing temperature, you're never going to get that acclimation. Schmitz can be that way too. So yeah, probably Newtonians, if you can get one that's got a thin mirror on it, or like a ED doublet refractor would be my recommendations for that, at least. Let's see. So that's the sun. Moving on. Meteor showers. There is a meteor shower happening right now. It's the Quadranids, which actually is peaking right now. January 2nd and 3rd is the peak, and we're in a really good spot for it because we're at about 11% for the moon. So meteor showers are best viewed after midnight when the Earth turns to where you're kind of leading into how the meteors are coming into the atmosphere. And the nice thing right now is if you are going to a dark location, the moon should be set well before midnight, so that way it'll be nice and dark with how that goes. Let's see. How about any meteor showers? We just did meteor showers, so that one's all done. Some are confused as to which end of the telescope to put the filter on. I've heard people thinking they can put solar glasses. Yes, you need a correct solar filter that fits the front of your telescope. So make sure, if you need help, call your local dealer. Call us if you're buying a Skywatcher. We can help with that. But yeah. Let's see. What are the concerns with using a tracking mount at less than 14 degrees Fahrenheit? I see the low end operational temps in the manual say 14 degrees. I have seen mounts that have problems in very cold weather, and I've seen the exact same mounts be fine. So it's kind of hit and miss, but with extremely cold temperatures, the metals tend to contract, which can make things tighter, especially when you're talking gear mesh. I have people who have tuned their mounts to be very tight with the backlash, and they bind it during the winter because it constricts so much. If you have a mount, I would just leave it alone and don't mess with anything. If you're having problems, then, I don't really know on that one. I would say the vast majority of mounts are fine. Again, your mileage may vary. Every single mount is going to be different. So, yeah. Let's see. Does aperture contribute to seeing planets? Yes, aperture is king when it comes to just about anything. However, the kryptonite, if you will, to larger aperture is your seeing conditions. If you do not have stable seeing conditions, aperture will be, the larger the aperture, it will be affected more. But when you have great seeing conditions, that extra aperture makes a huge difference. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, aperture helps, but if you don't have the seeing conditions to back it up, then it doesn't matter. And what I mean by seeing conditions is not darkness. It's how stable the sky is. And we did a whole episode a while back talking about seeing conditions, because a lot of times someone will say, well, I have really good seeing. I'm in a Bortle whatever sky, like a Bortle 3. Bortle 3 or Bortle scale, that's the measurement of the darkness of the sky. That has nothing to do with your seeing conditions. Conditions are clarity, transparency, stuff like that, stability. Things like that are what conditions are. You can live in the middle of downtown Los Angeles and have immaculate seeing conditions. And I have friends who do just that. I have one that lives literally next to LAX airport. You can see the airplane tails from his backyard. But the light pollution there is horrendous. The sky is orange at night. However, the seeing conditions, because of how close to the ocean he is, are very stable. So he's able to do incredible planetary observing and double stars and stuff like that. He's just adapted to doing observing that fits his location. So planets, double stars, stuff like that. But his seeing is excellent, although the darkness is terrible. So there's a mix of things. I'm in Colorado. Which way should I look? Most meteor showers are coming out of a constellation. So generally a meteor shower best viewed after midnight, usually about 30 to 40 degrees up in the east is generally where meteor showers will originate, because you're waiting for whatever the parent constellation is to rise. It generally is always out of the east. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Comets. So this past year we had a really excellent comet. I'm actually not sure what's going on with comets right now. So let's head over to cometchasing.skyhound.com. This is the website I like to use for observing comets. There's all kinds of good stuff here. If you're into observing comets, it breaks down all the major comets that are visible, and it tells you their magnitude. So right now, this C2024 G3 Atlas is a morning comet. It looks like it's more southern hemisphere, and it's going to peak just above the horizon over here around the 11th, but it's just under 5th magnitude, so binoculars should get it, but you'll have to take a look at where it actually is. But it looks like it's more of a southern hemisphere thing. This one, C2023A3, this put on the big show at the end of the year. This past fall, this was a really great comet. Naked eye, the tail was easy to see. It was quite a sight to see. Well, now it has moved on from its close encounter with us, and it's making its way out. Now it's at magnitude 10. Just a couple months ago, it was a naked eye. So it's made a big change. And then from there, we get to some more fainter objects where they're more telescopic targets, small little fuzzballs and stuff like that. So right now, there's no major comets that are putting on a big old show. But keep an eye on it. They do have a nice video now. They just started doing this in the last couple of years. They have like a recap video on what to see, so I need to watch that as well. But you can head over to cometchasing.skyhound.com, and it gives you a whole breakdown of all the comets that might be up and visible, and it's changing all the time. So if you're into comets, this is the website you need to be taking a look at. Highly recommend it. All right, deep sky. Now there is a ton of stuff to see in the nighttime sky right now. We're just going to keep it to the basic things, but highly recommend getting out there and checking out stuff, whether you're an astrophotographer, a deep sky observer, visual. The winter time is a fun time to get out despite it being cold. Generally, all the planets are visible around this time of year. For now, it's just timing and position. This is how they work. They're generally mostly visible in the fall and the winter. That's just how it tends to work. Over the next several years, that will change, obviously. But big one right now is the Andromeda Galaxy. This is M31, 2.5 million light years from Earth. You can see this in pretty much any sky. Visually, it's usually a smudge. Unless you're in dark skies, then you can start to see the spiral arms and the dust bands, which are kind of cool. And then if you get to darker locations, it makes a big difference. Larger aperture can also be helpful in resolving more detail. However, generally the larger the telescope, a lot of times the field of view gets narrower. So you don't have that nice wide field of view anymore. But just depends on what you're kind of looking for. Imaging wise, Andromeda is fairly easy. You can do it from town. You can do it from dark skies. There's a lot of hydrogen detail in there. So if you're using a narrowband filter like hydrogen alpha, put some time on that and pop out the little H2 regions in there. But there's a lot of good stuff to see right now. Andromeda is a very cool object. Actually, one of the best views I've ever had of Andromeda was just through a pair of binoculars from a dark sky site, because you just see how big the galaxy actually extends. It's quite large. Let's see, what's a good focal length for a planetary eyepiece? So planetary, you generally want to hit about 200 magnification. So whatever your telescope is, you want to take the focal length and divide it by whatever the focal length of the eyepiece is. But you really start doing nice planetary work at about 200 power. So just go with that. But you'll have to probably do some math on whatever your telescope is. So, if it's, I don't know, let's just figure this out. So let's just say it's 1,000 millimeters. So if you have a telescope that's got 1,000 millimeter focal length, you probably want to find something around 5 millimeter ballpark for planets. For planetary observing, this is why you see a lot of those eyepieces that are like a millimeter or two apart. When you get to the high power stuff, that's why you see like 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 6, 7, 8. That's because those little incremental jumps in those eyepiece focal lengths drastically affect how much magnification the telescope is going to pull down. So if you're into planets, it's nice to have a collection of higher power eyepieces. And if you want to figure that out, you can actually download our app, which helps you calculate a lot of that. And it is right here. It's called Scope Wizard. There it is right there. Has all kinds of calculators in there, but you can plug in your focal length and all that, and it'll help you calculate roughly what you're looking for. But you generally would like to hit about 200 power to make planetary really nice. So off the top of my head, like my planetary eyepieces, 3.5, 4.5, 6. So I have the Delos. So the Teleview Delos are really nice. The Pentax XWs, honestly, anything is pretty good. If you're on more of a budget, the Explore Scientific eyepieces are nice, but the Celestron LX, the XL LX series is very nice, and they're really well placed focal length wise. So I'm a big fan of those eyepieces. It's a good idea to use a Barlow lens. I don't like Barlows. I think Barlows tend to degrade the image. If you're on a tighter budget, then a Barlow is a nice thing to have because you get more use out of it. But I prefer having the eyepiece that actually produces the magnification that I need. But if you're just getting started and you just need something to help, a nice Barlow can be very helpful. But if you start getting serious about planetary, most people just end up getting the eyepiece of choice that produces it. I found I was pushing pretty high magnification, and I was using like a 3.5, and then I ended up getting a 3 millimeter as well. It doesn't come out very often. It only happens when the seeing is there. But I would rather go and buy the eyepiece that produces the magnification I need than to use a Barlow. But if you don't want to do that, a Barlow isn't terrible, but I don't find they're as good as using like a dedicated eyepiece. So that's just my perspective on it. All right, double cluster. This is in Perseus, 7,500 light years away. Very easy target, both visual and imaging. From a dark sky site, it's much more impressive because you get way more stars in the field of view. This is a great object for small little refractors because of the expanse that it takes. And you don't need a lot of aperture to actually take this thing down. It's a really nice object in the smaller telescopes, like a 3, 4, 5-inch telescope. It's a fun one to look at. It's easy to show in town, but it becomes more impressive from dark sky sites. And if you're imaging, I need to reshoot this. This is an out of focus image. It drives me nuts. If you're imaging, it's a set of open clusters actually, and it's very easy to work with. It doesn't take a lot of time to shoot it. There's some cool star colors in there, but gradients aren't a big deal because there's nothing like thin and filament like in it. So a gradient won't affect you as bad. It's easier to process an open cluster. Any reason why you're leaving out ortho eyepieces? So ortho eyepieces are very nice eyepieces. They're very simplistic designs, and for a lot of the very dedicated planetary observers, orthos tend to be the weapon of choice because they pretty much reduce any kind of scatter, or they eliminate it to very, very low light scatter. The backgrounds are usually very dark. So there's nothing wrong with orthos. So if you're really into planetary, ortho eyepieces are very nice. I don't have any at the moment. Actually, an eyepiece I'm trying out right now that I just got this past weekend is the Masuyama eyepieces, which, if you're not familiar with the Masuyamas, here, I'll bring them up. They're I think there's only I think Agena Astro is one of the few that actually sells them. But the Masuyamas are like a modified orthoplosal. I think Takahashi is selling a variant of them as well, but these are the traditional Masuyamas. I got to try a 15 millimeter this past weekend, and it was very nice. Here it is right here. They produced them in the 70s and the 80s, and it's been quite a while where they were very hard to find and very sought after, and now they're producing them again. So I'm starting to play with these, and I've been very impressed with how black the background is on these, and they're readily available. It's hard to find a good set of orthos. The Botter orthos have been highly regarded. The University Optics, if you can even find them. The Fujiyamas, I think, are also pretty good. But then here we go. Yeah, the Fujiyama, but they're hard to obtain right now. And then Takahashi was also doing some orthos, and I actually asked some of the companies who sell the orthos why they're not more common, and they simply said they don't sell. So, which I was a little surprised by, but they are a little niche nowadays. There's so much demand for wide angle, especially with astrophotography right now. There's not a lot of people who are spending a ton of money on eyepieces anymore. Everyone's going to cameras. But orthos are very nice. The Brandon eyepieces, if you want a really nice eyepieces, are nice. The top planetary eyepieces, probably if you can find them and you want to even spend the money on them, are the TMB monocentrics. Those are fantastic eyepieces. I had a 4 millimeter tiny little piece of glass in there. That thing was so sharp. And then of course you have the Zeiss Zao eyepieces, which are incredibly expensive for what they are, and you have to find them used, and they go for about $1,000 a pop. They're more collector items at that point, but yeah, so you have Zeiss, the Nikons, Pentax orthos, Botter orthos, but if you want something like modern day that's easy to get, those Masuyamas are actually pretty good, and I think they're a little bit better corrected, but yeah, so orthos are great, plossals are great, but there's a really good video I talked about a while ago from our friends at Woodland Hills Camera. Our friend Daniel Mounsey over there sat down with a gentleman by the name of Don Penzak, and they did a video on eyepieces. Let me see if I can actually find it. But they did a really nice video with Don Penzak, who's incredibly knowledgeable about eyepieces, and they really hit the nail on the head because I was actually looking at getting a set of eyepieces, of orthos, and it really came down to the best eyepiece is whatever eyepiece you are seeing, whatever eyepiece is in the telescope at the time that the seeing really snaps into gear. And that, here we go. If this is actually worthwhile, if you want to go over there and watch it, if you're into eyepieces, this video is excellent. Daniel Mounsey, very, very accomplished observer, and then Don Penzak as well. They talk about eyepieces and orthos and stuff like that. But the best thing is what is actually there in the eyepiece or in the focuser at the time that the seeing is really good. What time of green lasers do you recommend for stargazing with people? Green lasers are kind of hard to obtain right now, especially good ones, because you are really limited to 5 milliwatt lasers, which are a toy, in my opinion. You used to be able to get like 50 and 100 milliwatt lasers. They're hard to find nowadays, but those are bright enough to show people. I don't even know where to get stuff anymore. And I have to ask around and dig if you can find anything. But yeah, green lasers are kind of tough to find right now. So, but I don't like 5 milliwatt lasers. They're just not bright enough, but you have to be careful with them. There's a lot of questions today. Let's see. Purchased a Teleview MP101 and had a Brandon 8. I've always wanted a Teleview MP101. I have no need for an MP101, but they're fantastic telescopes. They're probably one of my favorite telescopes out there. Don't know why. They just perform well and they're sharp. Let's see. Shouldn't the focal ratio of a telescope contribute to the performance of an eyepiece as well? Yes, on a fast Dobsonian, like my Dob is f3.3. If I put a Plössl in there, it tears it apart. So I use a lot of the Ethos eyepieces because they are well corrected for such fast optics. There's still a paracore coma corrector in there. But it really depends on what you're doing ultimately. I would say faster optics are much more critical on what eyepieces are doing than slower optics. I've seen that with the Botter Hyperions. Botter Hyperion eyepieces are great eyepieces, especially for the money. They are very good up till about, I would say, f6 or f7, and then the edges start to kind of fall apart a bit. But if you're using like a Mac or a long refractor or a Schmidt-Cassegrain, the Botter Hyperions are fantastic eyepieces. They have some newer ones out that I think are better corrected, which I've heard good things about. But the Hyperions, which have been very popular over a couple decades now, have been very nice, but I do find they don't perform as well in faster telescopes. So usually the faster the optic, the more critical it is on the eyepiece. And using better eyepieces on these fast, I would say sub f5, especially f4 optics, you need to be aware of what you're doing, and you might even need to implement, particularly if it's like a Newtonian, a coma corrector. Okay. Next up, you have M15, a very nice globular cluster up in Pegasus, about 34,000 light years away. Again, any sky. It's kind of faint. It's smaller telescopes, but you can see the little fuzzball that it is. And then from dark skies, you can resolve it into a cluster, especially if you've got, an 8-inch or bigger telescope. It looks like a cluster. Imaging-wise, clusters are very easy to shoot. You don't really have to deal with gradients too much, although if you're in a very dark sky, you can get some of this celestial cirrus that you've got in here, or it's called Integrated Flux Nebula, or IFN. You have all that floating up there, and in some deep exposures from dark skies, you can pull out this kind of detail, but you won't see that visually. If you do, it's wow. So that's a good one right now. It's fairly easy to find, but if you've got a new telescope from the holidays, try tracking this thing down. It's fairly easy to find with star maps. because it's just off the head of Pegasus. But it's a fun one. We were looking at this past weekend and looks good. The Ghost, this is up in Cepheus. Cepheus is this dark, dusty constellation around Ursa Minor, the Big Dipper. If you're an astrophotographer, this is the constellation for you because it has all kinds of just weird, obscure, dusty, off the beaten path stuff. A lot of fun. The Ghost is one of them. The Ghost is rather small, so be prepared, and it's very close to the Iris Nebula. If you have a wide enough field of view to catch them both, you can actually see how they connect with one another in this big dust cloud that's floating out there. About 1,500-ish light years away. Visually, it's extremely challenging, and you're probably only getting at the brightest section of the Ghost, which is right here, and you have to be very careful about looking at it because you could easily run past it, and you probably need as much aperture as you can obtain to get it because it is rather small. I've seen this ghostly little bright section, and it's a challenge, and we're talking 20 plus inch telescope, so rather large instrument to even see it. And it's small, so you can run over it pretty quickly. But very dark skies, very transparent is what you want. If you're imaging it, narrowband does no good here. This is all just deep exposures. If you're shooting monochrome, really good luminance frames to bring out all the fluffy dust that's floating out there. But it's a challenging target. You really got to dig deep, long exposures with this one. Now, on the opposite side of the thing, you've got M45, the Pleiades, up in Taurus, which is a naked eye target. It is 500 light years away, not 2,200. I knew I missed a thing in here. I had to fix that. Fixed some other ones, but I missed that one. So 500 light years away. We're going to change it really quick. It's going to drive me nuts. This is a open cluster. To see the nebulosity, you need to be in very dark skies, and no filter will help here. It's a reflection nebula. Filters don't work on reflection nebulas. You just need good, dark, transparent skies and aperture. The best view I've ever had of this is through my buddy's 20-inch f3 Dobsonian. He's able to get the whole cluster in there, which is really impressive, with your feet on the ground, by the way. And it has so much light that you're able to see a lot of the nebulosity, but it's a very unique instrument. There's not many of those size scopes around. You can do it with other Dobs, larger aperture instruments, but you'd probably have to do it in sections as well. But the Pleiades is a good one. You can see it in binoculars. You can see it in a small refractor. You can see it naked eye, and it just gets more impressive as you get further out away from the city lights. Imaging-wise, again, fairly easy. You can get the nebulosity from in town. However, it can get washed out, and if you're dealing with gradients, that could be a problem as well, especially with this faint nebulosity there. The bubble. The bubble is one of my favorite targets. It's a lot smaller than people think. Longer focal length is very helpful here. Visual wise, you can see this in a larger aperture telescope. I would say you could probably see it in a 10 or 12 inch to get the brightest section of the bubble, which is right over here, but it's going to be faint. You really want to get into the larger, like 20 plus inch class of telescope to see it, and probably benefit from using like a UHC or O3 filter. I've never tried an H beta, but there's a lot of hydrogen in the region, which is all this red, which means an H beta might be helpful here as well, but I've never tried it. The best view I've ever had of it was through my 28 inch with the night vision. It just crushes this target. But it's a challenge to see it otherwise. Imaging wise, it's easy. It's very receptive to narrowband. So if you want to do just hydrogen alpha, or you want to do bicolor or Hubble palette, very receptive, lots of detail in there. Some of the best images I've ever seen of the bubble are in a Hubble palette. It's very easy to work with that. But if you're trying to do color, it's going to look a lot like this. You'll need to do it from dark sky sites to get it. And there's a lot of detail around the bubble as well. You can see there's dark nebulas, there's some reflection, there's a lot of hydrogen. M52, the open cluster, is hanging out up here. There's a lot going on in the bubble. So you can check that out as well. Of course, M33, the Triangulum Galaxy. This one is more of a challenge in dark skies because it's so diffuse. Larger aperture definitely helps, but it's still rather diffuse. You need to be in very dark skies to actually catch it. Imaging wise, again, you can do it from in town. Works best in dark skies. It has a lot of H2 regions, which are these little star forming regions. You're going to need a hydrogen alpha filter to pop those out to do the best work. So don't be afraid to spend some time shooting hydrogen alpha on M33 and then blending that data into your other data set to help pop some of those H2 regions out. But you're going to need some time on it because of how sandy and diffuse M33 actually is. Of course, we have M42, Orion. This is like the staple of the winter skies. 1,600 light years away. Literally any telescope will work for this. Bigger the better, the more detail you get. It's very bright, very receptive to filters, particularly O3 and UHC. Filters are very nice. This is really the nebula that everyone cuts their teeth on when they're getting started. Astrophotography wise, Orion is as complicated as you want it to be. You can take a quick picture and make it look good. Or there's this shot that I did a few years ago, which took a lot of effort because this is a mix of luminance, one-shot color, and hydrogen alpha to bring out the background. We even did a processing video on this. And then you have to shoot shorter frames to get the core to come out, because when you're doing the long, deep frames to pull out all the nice detail, you blow out the core. So Orion's a very good target to generally try imaging on because you can make it as complicated as you want it to be. Let's see, there's two questions here this one's for imaging deep sky objects with a one-shot color camera. Which filter should I use? According to the Bortle scale, I live in Bortle 7, but can't travel to Bortle 3 and 4. The L Pro or something like a light pollution filter is pretty helpful. Like Optolong's L Pro, the Astronomic CLS filter, CLS CCD filter. Chroma Low Glow is very nice, but they're all very similar to each other. And there's variants of them from all major companies, so just pick one. The Antlia Tri-Band RGB is a very nice all-around filter, which I use a lot for testing with one-shot color, especially at home. So that's a pretty selective filter. It does a nice job. I haven't tried their quad band, but the tri-band works really good. And then you have like the dual bands, which there's like the Optolong L Enhance, and there's a lot of variations that are even more restrictive depending on how tight you want it to be. And then you have like the Antlia dual band HA03, which is also a really nice filter. So there's a lot of options for one-shot color cameras nowadays, but if I had to pick a couple, it would be something like an L Pro light pollution filter, the tri-band RGB, and then like an Antlia dual band HA03. So that would work fine. How many stars have you seen in the trapezium? 6. A, B, C, D, E, F is what I've been able to see. I've been waiting for the seeing to get good enough to take the bigger scope and really punch into the core and see if we can bring out H and I. And I think a couple of those are doubles as well. But yeah, 6 on a given night is pretty easy to pick out. I've seen 6 with a 4-inch refractor. It's not... Seeing the 6 major stars in the trapezium isn't a terribly hard challenge. But when you start to get to H and I and these other ones in there, then it gets difficult because they're really tiny and they're faint. So, yeah. Okay, next up, we're getting to the end here as well. Of course, you have the Horsehead Nebula. So there's IC 434, which is the outer nebula here. And then you have the Flame Nebula. And then you have the Reflection Nebula, which I completely spaced on its designation. And then you have the Horsehead itself, which is right here. That's B33. So there's a lot of naming conventions that are used around this particular object. Horsehead visually is a rather challenging target. A lot of people want to see it, but it is very hard to see. I would say you need about a 10-inch or bigger telescope, very dark skies. H beta filter is a must. However, I've squeaked by with UHCs, but H beta is really the ticket. But the more aperture you throw on it, the better. It's a lot bigger than I think people actually think it is, but it's a lot like looking for a black thumbprint on black paper. I find the best way to do it if you don't know where you're at, because you can usually, in a dark sky, you can see the Flame Nebula pretty easily. The flame is very bright and easy to catch with a moderate telescope. But when I'm on the Horsehead Nebula, I like to get the bright star Alnitak, which is right here, out of the way, or out of the field of view, because it becomes distracting. And then if it's a Dobsonian, it's nice to take the telescope and slowly move it back and forth and see what moves with the star field. And you might be able to catch the Horsehead actually moving in there. I've seen it in a 16-inch. It's relatively, if you're careful, it's not terribly difficult in the 16 under the right conditions. 20 was a bit easier. The 28 on an average night can take it down from a dark sky sight. If you happen to have the night vision systems and the H alpha filter, it's a walk in the park. It's easy to catch it from a decent sky. But it's really in the realm of the larger telescopes. And it's a fun challenge to see. Imaging wise, it's very, very easy. The cameras pick this up very quickly, whether you're in town or not. And it's very receptive in hydrogen alpha because there's a lot of emission in this area. So Horsehead is a fun one to go after. It's one of my favorite targets in the sky. Wallen Orion, any news when Betelgeuse was supernova? No idea. Haven't heard of anything. I haven't looked up anything recently. I haven't heard any updates about when that thing's going to go, but it'll be interesting. All right. So that's pretty much it for deep sky. There's obviously a ton of other things that we could actually take a look at this time of year. There's all kinds of stuff that we could actually look at. So let's talk Totem, target of the month. For December, the last one was Barnard 174. So we'll take a look at that. Now that we have wrapped up 2024, we are going to look at all the submissions and we're going to pick the top 3 images and hopefully announce them by the end of the month. Or maybe we'll announce them on the February, a month from now. We'll announce the 2024 winners of the imaging contests. So we'll try to get that done. I see someone hasn't gotten a totem patch. We'll have to check out what's going on with that. We'll look through it when we start raking everything in. We have some patches that we can send out for 2024. So we'll get that going. But to start 2025 in January, first off, here is the 2025 Totem Target Patch. So we are having these made right now. So we hope to probably have those hopefully in February by the end of the month. So this will be the 2025 Totem Patch, which is the... I think this is the 3rd, 4th patch. Yeah. I don't remember. how many patches we've done already. I think this is actually patch 4. So this is the 4th year of doing Totem. So there's, I think it's 2022, 23, 24, and now 25. Yeah, so this is patch number 4. So we'll have these on order, but this will be the target of the month patch. So when you complete it, you send in the data to our website, this is the patch that you'll be receiving, this one. So the first year, technically you're right, but the first year we did Totem was only for a few months. So there's technically 4 patches now, but this will be the 3rd full year that we do it. So, and then of course the target of the month for January is the Barnard Loop. Very large target. This is actually a mosaic with a Canon 200mm lens that I had to stitch together. You can do this in hydrogen alpha. It's very easy to do from in town. You just big field of view in H alpha. So that is your target of the month for January. But yeah, that's it for January night skies. If you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe, leave a like on a video. Let us know we're doing a good job. Next week, our topic is the 2025 calendar of events for astronomical events for 2025. And then we've got some stuff to tell you guys about after that. And then we're working on our special guests for January as well. Let's see. What is Skywatcher's New Year's resolution? To hit our sales goal, which is looking good. Thanks to everybody. It's fun to get out. It's fun to see everyone. Just showing off new stuff. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about equipment wise this year. So yeah, let's see what we can show you guys. But stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of product announcements leading up to NEAF this year. You guys have already, the wave mounts, of course, were last year. Heliostars are getting ready to go. And then there's some other new stuff that we'll be announcing here on the webcast before NEAF. NEAF is 3 months from now. It's very early April this year. So we're excited for that because there's a lot of new stuff we're hoping to show off there. So anyway, if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on a video. Let us know we're doing a good job. Thanks very much for watching. We will see you guys next Friday. And other than that, clear skies, stay warm out there, and have a great weekend. And if you're waiting on a totem patch, just email us at totem@skywatchusa.com, and we'll take a look at that and see what's going on, try to get everyone cleared up. So thanks a lot, everyone. Clear skies. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you guys next time. See ya. Bye.